a stack of cards on your table or maybe your shelf that you want to get graded, but maybe you're trying to decide if it's worth the money to get it done? Well, today is for you, because we're going to walk through a scenario that I think many of us face in the sports card world, and that is grading sports cards really worth the hassle? My name's Ty Wilson, and I host a show called Chasing Cardboard, and I've sold over $2.5 million in sports cards the past 5 years. Look, grading cards serves some very important purposes in the sports card world. Number one, grading allows you to preserve and protect cards in nice cases, known as slabs. Number two, it authenticates and proves to the world that the card isn't fake. Number three, it adds a numerical grade to the condition of the card. Now, I realize grading sports cards can be a very polarizing subject. Truly, especially in the collector part of the hobby. But in the reselling world, grading cards is a very important element to adding value to your cards. Or is it? Well, a few weeks ago, I put out an episode where I listed a vintage Hall of Fame card for every minute of an entire day. That was 1,440 cards. It was a blast. Hopefully you checked it out. Well, a few months before that, I pulled out 300 of those cards that I thought would be good candidates for grading. And then in early November, I narrowed it down to 279 cards for a PSA submission. All vintage, all cards that were either grade A Hall of Fame players or vintage cards that look like PSA 6 and above to me. Well, today we're gonna go and find out if it was worth the time and worth the effort to grade all those cards. Let's start with an overview of what I was actually submitting. Like I said, I have 279 cards of all sports. I have the Mantles, the Aarons, Clementes, and Mays, and the bats that are expected to be lower grade, like 3 and below. The rest of the cards were in the submission because they were solid, potentially high grade vintage candidates. I went back and I figured out what I paid for all of those cards, and I rounded up to the nearest 100. This put my total cost at $2,000. I quickly ran the comparison prices on those cards to see what they would sell for on eBay, and I pegged them about $2,900. So to make it clean, I'm rounding it up to $3,000. So if I were to take these cards and go sell them ungraded or raw, I believe I can net a profit of about $1,000. So I'm submitting these cards with the hope that I earn more than $1,000 of profit. I'm up for the challenge. Well, in mid-November, I decided it was time, and I took the 279 cards and I got them ready to send off to PSA to get graded. I actually sent them off on November 15th as a part of their value bulk offer that they were presenting to customers. These were received and scanned in by PSA on November 20th. Express mail is a beautiful thing. Typically, I would expect to wait 2 or 3 months for these, but PSA was blazing fast, and they completed the order on December 18th. That's right, less than 30 days through the holidays. Now, this sometimes does happen at the end of the year when they're trying to add to their end of year bookings, so it worked in my favor, at least this time. I received my cards right around Christmas. Now, for those that have graded vintage cards, swings in the 1 or 2 grade point area can make a huge difference with values, especially when you get above a 5. So I was definitely pretty anxious to see how some of these cards came back. And at first glance, for the most part, I'd say I was pretty pleased with the overall grades. Here are some of the cards that came back as expected. The 1955 Topps Hank Aaron, it graded the PSA 1. We expected it to be a PSA 1. The 55 Topps Willie Mays also graded the 1. The 56 Topps Ted Williams graded the 1.5, right in line with our expectations. And finally, the 62 Mantle and Mays Manager Dream card, one of my favorite cards of all time, came back a PSA 5, right where I had it pegged.
This is the 62 Topps Mays Mantle, sold for $198.
But there were definitely some letdowns. These were the cards that I thought would potentially swing the values way into my favor, and they didn't work out too well. First was this 52 Bowman Mini Minoso from the Antique Shop episode of Chasing Cardboard. Here's the scene.
I priced that, but then I got whole counter boxes full of them over there.
Okay.
There's another good one there. It's Minoso.
Mini Minoso rookie.
52, yeah.
That looks really good, actually.
When I first saw this card, I looked at it and I thought, man, this is a 5 or maybe even a 6. But when I took it back to the Airbnb that night, I noticed a mark on the back. So I thought it would grade maybe a 4 or a 5 with a mark qualifier. Well, it came back a PSA 3 with no qualifier. Second is the 57 Topps Frank Robinson rookie, which was stunning in every possible way. Perfectly centered, no crazy flaws. I had it down safely as a PSA 6. I still can't figure out how it got a 3, but it got a 3.
Frank Robinson, rookie, PSA 3. Sold for $177.
Third was the 1923 W515 Kenneth Williams. I do not know how you could hand cut a better copy than this. And it's 100 years old, for crying out loud. I mean, look at this thing. Came back, PSA 3. Finally, the 1960 Topps Roger Maris, which I thought was the cleanest card of the entire submission. I was being conservative, and I thought it would get a 7. Came back a 5. So those were some of the gut punches, and to really blow out your submissions, you need some of those to go your way. They didn't. Oh well. But as always, there were a few positive surprises in the batch. This 1958 Topps Mickey Mantle came back as a PSA 2. With the surface and the corners, I thought it was clearly a PSA 1. And going from a 1 to a 2 adds about $60. I also had this 1973 Topps Roberto Clemente with the centering and the surface marks. I thought it was maybe a 3 or a 4. Actually came back a 6, a nice little surprise. But overall, the submissions seemed to feel pretty accurate and fair, so really no complaints on my end. But now the part that we're all waiting for, the selling. But before we do any of that, let me update you on the overall numbers because it costs a lot of money to get those graded. Our actual total grading cost with shipping was $54.29. That's shipping there and back, which puts the average cost to grade each card at $19.45 and puts my overall cost for these 279 cards at $7,429. So for this entire adventure to make sense, I need to gross $8,429. That is a tall task. So here's how I decided to approach the selling. I spent an entire afternoon loading up these auctions into SixBit. I then created a title structure that I liked. I created a new SKU so I can monitor the sales easier, and then I added SKU tags on back of all the cards to make shipping easier in the back end. I then preloaded all 279 auctions at one time into SixBit. This actually took about 8 hours for the entire ordeal. And then I scheduled 28 cards to go live each evening for 10 days straight. This was important to me because I wanted to make it easy for buyers to bundle up cards and kind of see the momentum happening in the store. And if auctions were overlapping during a 10-day period, I'd potentially get a lot of repeat buyers. At least that was my logic. In addition, I decided to start each card at $27.75 with free shipping. I was thinking $27 protected me against losing money on the grading. Anyway, and then I stepped away and I let the auctions run. Well, kind of. I actually added a 3% promotion rate to this entire campaign just to ensure that these moved a little closer to the top of search results. And then on day 5 or 6, I sent an email out to all of my eBay followers letting them know about the vintage campaign. Then I sat back and I waited for the results. Day 1 was $1,400. Day 2 was $2,100. Day 3, $3,400. Day 7, $6,800. Day 9 was about $9,000. And after the first round of auctions, after day 10, we had sold 184 items for a grand total of $99.17. We did it. With our overall cost of $74.29, we netted $2,488 in profit. But because I did have to ship PSA slabs, my shipping cost went from $1 for ESE to $5 to Ground Advantage, and I was offering free shipping, so that led to an additional $400 in shipping costs. So to be fair, our actual net profit was $2,088. Now, because we decided to grade this batch of cards, we ended up doubling the amount of profit that we would have received. In addition, I still have about 90 cards in my inventory that I'll be selling over the next few weeks. Overall, I'd consider all of that to be a huge success. Now, for anyone curious on my top sales, let me flip around here and let me show you some of the highlights from the sales. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm in the command center, by the way. I love wearing headsets. The easiest way to show you some of the sales for this particular campaign is just to go into SixBit. This is what I use to run the business. All of my high volume stuff, high end stuff. I have custom settings here in SixBit to make life a lot easier. If you are curious about SixBit, put a comment below. Hey, I want to learn more about SixBit, and I'll work on a video to help educate because I think this is a great platform. Okay, first note, the Thurman Munson rookie, it shows sold $306 here. This did not sell for it did sell for $306, but it was not paid for. So that was removed from all the totals. But you can kind of see here the PSA 2, the one that I mentioned, did better than I thought grade-wise, sold for $270. Hank Aaron, 55 sold for $262. You got the 62 Mantle Maze, another one that I thought graded fairly well. PSA 5 sold for $198. $180 on the 62 Mantle. The Frank Robinson rookie sold for $177. By the way, this is really cool too. You can see all the hits over here too, like how many people were viewing this thing. It gives you a good idea of the cards that were generating interest. If you're learning, you're building up your store, like go look at those types of things. If I sort it by hits, I can see, like, although some of these weren't the highest sellers, they were the most looked at. This George Brett rookie was getting a lot of interest. Only sold for $76 because it graded a 4. But it just gives you a good idea of what you maybe could go buy in the future, things you should be looking out for. So you can see the rundown there, right? The Maze 55 PSA 1 sold for $164. There's the Minoso PSA 3 rookie sold for $116. That should have been a 5 and should have sold for $250. Oh well. Jim Rice PSA 8 rookie cup. That surprised me. Sold for $106. PSA 8 for a 76 card is pretty sweet. First basketball card in the list was the Maravich 71 Tops PSA 6. There's the 515 Kenneth Williams hand cut PSA 3 sold for $92. Right below that was the 1919 Aldi Zider, another card that we got out of that antique shop purchase that sold for $85. So I'll scroll down here. You can kind of just get a good look at some of these things. Some good sales, man, overall. All right, back to the main camera and we'll finish this out. So you can see as I scroll through here, there was a wide range of solid sales. But I wouldn't be a good host if I didn't share a few quick takeaways from the overall experience. Number one, grading cards reduced questions and complaints by nearly 100%. This is a forgotten benefit to many sellers. Even if your profit percentage isn't grandiose, the sheer fact that you reduce returns and complaints is a huge benefit. This is even more important with very subjective items like vintage cards, because you're going to get 2 or 3% of your people, your buyers, complaining about the condition, unless you have them all graded. Number two, higher grade non-Hall of Famers simply don't have a strong market. I graded about 40 of the 1955 Bowman and 57 Topps football cards. All came back as PSA 5 and higher. Unfortunately, they just didn't attract the amount of interest that I thought they would. Lesson learned. And number three, creating events with similar types of cards really moves the needle. I've been doing this for years, but now on a larger scale. And when you create groups of listings over shorter periods of time, it gives people a reason to watch and to find more of your listings. And it overall creates a lot more orders and larger orders at that. And the loyalty grows with your customer base. So adding this into your reseller bag of tricks is worth the time. Grading has its place, but I understand it's not for everyone. But if you're looking for ways to add value or add some margin, go figure out your inventory, add a rhythm with grading, and go use PSA to add some margin. I appreciate you watching this entire journey. And don't forget to go subscribe and click the notifications button, because we do have a few juicy videos in the queue that you're not going to want to miss. Take care.